Season 3, Episode 4, Heroes, Villains, and Society's Shadow. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 4. Most people spend their lives trying to gain power, status, or influence. Some are born into it and never get to put it down. This episode is not about envy. It is not about admiration. And it is not about condemning privilege. It is about moral agency under unavoidable authority. What happens when someone is born into a role they did not choose, a name they did not earn, a shadow they cannot escape? And what does Stoicism actually demand when abdication itself is not morally neutral? We often divide the world into heroes and villains. But history shows us something more uncomfortable. Many people are born into proximity with guilt, power, or suspicion. Not because of what they have done, but because of where they came from. The shadow arrives first. Character is judged later, if at all. Stoicism forces us to ask a harder question. Is moral worth determined by perception or by action? Consider the descendants of historical tyrants, families connected to regimes like the Nazis, generations removed from the crimes, yet still associated with them. They inherit no authority, yet inherit judgment. Some internalize that inherited guilt, carrying shame that is not theirs. Others rebel, rejecting morality altogether, convinced that if they are condemned anyway, virtue has no value. And then there are those who choose a quieter path, living deliberately, contributing carefully, refusing both denial and self-flagellation. Stoicism is uncompromising here. You are not responsible for the past, but you are responsible for your conduct now. Virtue is not a public performance. It is an internal discipline, especially when the world refuses to separate you from history. This same moral failure appears throughout history in the scapegoating of entire groups. Jewish communities across centuries were blamed for economic collapse, political instability, disease, and cultural anxiety. Individuals were treated not as moral agents, but as symbols. Stoicism rejects this entirely. Guilt is individual. Virtue is individual. And injustice does not invalidate character. To act rightly under misjudgment is not weakness, it is discipline. But Inherited power introduces a deeper philosophical problem, because here the shadow is not only judgment, it's obligation. This is where Stoicism becomes demanding rather than comforting. Stoicism does not say power is evil, wealth is corrupt, authority is immoral. Stoicism says something far stricter. Power is morally indifferent. It has no ethical value on its own. It becomes good or bad only through use. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Stoicism never asked him to step down. It asked him to rule without being ruled by power. That distinction matters, especially for those who never chose authority in the first place. Royalty, dynasties, entrenched families, they expose a problem most ethical systems avoid. Power without consent. Most leaders pursue authority. Royalty inherits obligation before reason can choose. Duty precedes agency. Stoicism values duty, but only when aligned with reason. So we must ask, is duty still virtuous when it was never chosen? Stoicism, it's an inward philosophy. Royal life is permanently outward. Every action becomes symbolic, every gesture political, every mistake institutional. There is no private virtue, no unseen moral rehearsal. Inner freedom becomes harder, not easier. For a private individual, walking away from power can be virtuous. For royalty, abdication may destabilize institutions, harm others, violate perceived duty. The Stoic escape route, to withdraw, may itself be unethical. And this is the paradox. You cannot flee power without consequence, but remaining risks moral corrosion. So what is the hidden cost of having it all? People spend their lives chasing wealth, status, security, influence. Royalty begins with all of it and pays differently. The cost is, for them, permanent scrutiny, emotional restraint as obligation, inability to fail privately, identity fused with an institution, and duty, for the most part without an exit. From a Stoic perspective, this is not freedom, it's bondage to a role. As Epictetus warned, no man is free who is not master of himself. But what if your role never allows full self-mastery? So what would Stoicism actually demand? Not renunciation, not a rebellion, and not moral theatre. It would demand radical restraint, justice without personal gratification, humility without withdrawal, emotional discipline under surveillance, inner freedom while outwardly constrained. This is harder than refusing power. It is virtue without escape. So in that sense, inherited power may be the most demanding Stoic test of all. So let's bring it back to the world we live in. This episode is not really about kings or queens. It's about anyone who inherits a role, carries expectations that they didn't choose, benefits from systems they didn't design, or who cannot simply walk away without consequence. Family businesses, political dynasties, cultural elites, and institutions that outlive individuals. So Stoicism asks, how do you act justly when the role is fixed, the scrutiny constant, and the exit costly? We may not have all the answers, but we can ask better questions. So, answer me this. What is gained when we act rightly, regardless of recognition? What is lost when survival or status tempts us to compromise? How do we hold integrity when society misjudges us? These questions, they're not abstract. They are lived quietly by those whose power cannot be put down. So now we have examined burden without choice. The next step is to examine influence by design. The core question? Something like this. If some people are born into power, how is power created everywhere else? And more importantly, how are populations shaped to accept it? I'll see you at the next episode.